Bit of a news dump to get through today, my friends. We have some very interesting stories involving some surprise sales as well as updates around big money potential moves. So my friends, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys have watched my match review after we beat Luton Town 3-2 today. I hope you guys are getting ready to have some fun before this year ends. So my friends, hit that like button. And without wasting any more time, let's discuss one of these surprise updates today surrounding Ian Matsen. Well, I'm saying surprise in a very loose type of manner because for the past few reports, we have realized that Borussia Dortmund have shown some strong interest in signing Matsen. There's light interest from West Ham, Man City, and a host of clubs back home in Holland as well too. However, we discussed the reports coming out from Holland as it suggests that Borussia Dortmund have agreed personal terms with Ian Matsen, and currently they are negotiating and holding conversations with us over a potential loan plus option to buy type of deal. Now at this point in time, Ian Matsen's contract does expire in 2025. We have failed in agreeing a contract extension with him, so I guess hypothetically, if he goes on loan to Borussia Dortmund, we still own him for at least another 12 months, which gives us more time potentially to renegotiate new terms. That's how I'm seeing things. But outside of that, I think it's quite obvious that Matsen will be getting sold. He isn't playing games, and he rejected a move to Burnley at the end of the summer to fight for his spot. It hasn't worked out, and when you have an opportunity like Borussia Dortmund, like in January, you don't turn that down. I think honestly that is the best move for him, as he replaces their technical former Portuguese left back in Guerrero, who later moved to Bayern Munich. And I just think that with how versatile Ian is, with how good he is entering spaces, his skill, his pace, I really feel like he would really complement playing at Dortmund. And I think there is a really big chance that this move for Matsen pays off big in the long term, because if he performs, he could alert all the big clubs across Europe. Now, I'm going to end things by saying this. If we allow Ian Matsen to leave, if there is like an option at the end to allow Dortmund to buy him on a permanent move, all I'm hoping we do is we insert a buyback option or favourable options that allow us to potentially sign him again at a future point. Maybe right now at this stage, it isn't the perfect time for Matsen to try and command a first team spot, but that doesn't mean that in 2-3 years time, this guy doesn't end up being a top European fullback. And knowing how over the next few years, I would not be surprised to see the left back area in our squads evolving, getting different. Knowing that we could have Ian Matsen to rely upon could be some smart piece of business if we look to secure things this way. So that's the latest news. So that's Ian Matsen news out of the way. Now for the next story, I want to discuss an update surrounding Estevao Willian. It's a name that keeps popping up consistently time and time again. There's a big story happening here, and yes, I know that our fetish for left-footed wingers continues. However, I'll keep this update brief, get straight to the point. We know currently there's a €60 million release clause inserted in Willian's contract, and we've shown that we are ready to pay the full amount of money. Right now, we're applying pressure to Palmeiras to get the okay from the player. However, the update is Estevao Willian is delaying any decision he can right now because ideally he prefers to sign for Barcelona. Now his agent and Andre Curry, he's set to hold talks with Barcelona next week as he arrives for the announcement of Vitor Roque, and he's hoping to hold conversations with Laporta and their sporting director in Deco, and they're prepared to tell Barcelona there is a willingness on their part to negotiate with Palmeiras to find the best possible payment structures that allows Barcelona to compete in the race to sign him, because as we know, they have very poor finances right now, and they're hoping that Palmeiras might entertain a more favourable negotiation with Barcelona. We have more twists to the story though, because obviously clubs like us, clubs like Paris Saint-Germain, we are the two big clubs looking to buy Estevao Willian. We are prepared both to pay the full €60 million, but on top of Barcelona's interest, we are willing to up the offer by paying for this deal in cash. That is the news coming out from Brazil right now, and most times Brazilian reports surrounding us, they always tend to be quite factual. So this is a very interesting twist to the story, because we are looking to wrap this deal up, it seems like, and this willingness to pay for most of this deal in cash, that is something Palmeiras can't really easily turn down. So let's see what happens. But currently, all the best clubs in world football are after the 16-year-old Messinho. So let's see what happens here. There's a big story here on the horizon. And now we discuss one of the shock stories of today. It involves Conor Gallagher, Tottenham, and our willingness to sell him in January. Now, I spoke about this story a while back. We know that Tottenham came close to signing him in the summer, but they didn't have the funds to get that seal through in the end. And they're hoping to add him and boost their hopes of having success this season. So before I get into things, there is some more context coming out around the story, and that's the fact that right now we are denouncing the fact that we are in advanced negotiations with Spurs. The consensus right now is that maybe the reports that came out from Italian journalists were a bit too premature, a bit too aggressive, might not be accurate. Yeah, on one hand, that most likely is the case, but on the other hand, what if you're keeping things wrapped? You want to keep things quite secret. You don't want to get this type of story leaked out. It doesn't help the player, it doesn't help the manager, it doesn't help anyone, right? So let's see what happens, because for me, the report mentions just advanced talks. It mentions nothing about agreeing a deal. It mentions nothing about reaching an agreement with the player. Obviously, if you're Tottenham, you'll probably hold talks with us to try and entertain whether there are hopes that you could sign Conor Gallagher. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Gallagher is destined to leave us in January. So I don't think we should get too panicked with our thoughts. We should understand the context of the situation. Yeah, we know that we are entertaining bids of around 50 million. In my opinion, I feel like that money now is a bit too cheap, because back in the summer, we had offers of like 42.5 million, 45 million coming in. And you're telling me that with Conor's form this season, showing that he's up there in Europe and in the Premier League for defensive actions and many key midfield actions, that his value's gone up by 5 million. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I feel like, listen, if it came down to Conor having to get sold, we must be selling him at an absolute premium, considering it's a January window and he's one of the most informed midfield players in Europe right now. So I can't entertain bids of 50 million. That isn't enough. But outside of that though, I've been thinking about this story all day. And I think to myself, what is the utility in selling Conor now? I think on one hand, it doesn't do any favours for the sporting directors. Number two, it undermines Pochettino dramatically, because Conor Gallagher is the only enforcer we really have in midfield. I think Caicedo isn't there just yet. I'm seeing these interesting comparisons of like Conor last season, who was bouncing off challenges and opponents. He's leveled up physically, and I think Caicedo will have that for next season. He's had his difficulties, he had no preseason. I get all of that, and I think there's a reason why currently Conor and Caicedo look very balanced playing together, because they both help support each other. If you were to like aggressively move to like Caicedo and Enzo straight away, listen, it will work on the ball, but I think off the ball there could be some difficulties, and it puts a ton of pressure on Caicedo to have to do even more off the ball. So I just don't think there's any need to start rushing the evolution of the team right now. Worst came to worst, you really are desperate to sell Conor Gallagher. It's something you have to consider for summer now. You can't do it in January. It just doesn't make any sense right now, and the team needs him. We need his defensive actions. They have been very helpful throughout the season. Only way I see us potentially being open to selling Conor Gallagher is if we feel like someone big is coming in January. And I mean big like Osimhen. It can't be big like Diomande, because I think to myself, listen, the kid is an absolute talent, wonderkid, but to spend 69 million on a fifth choice centre back to compete with the rest of these guys that you've spent hundreds of millions on already, it doesn't make sense to sell your key midfield player right now, reducing the strength of midfield, and then using that money to fund another centre back move. I mean, we're recently seeing Gilchrist getting, brought on as a sub. He's been impressing the fans. He's in tune in the game straight away. And it's just like, and when it comes to the lower ranks in your squad, I don't think you need to have 70 mil players as your fifth choice, fourth choice defenders. It's silly. And I feel like this is the mistake we're making, where we undermine our academy completely, where we could be filling a lot of squad roles. I'll say this, and I said this in the summer, is there a massive difference between Disasi and Chalobah. Chalobah's been unlucky with injuries. I get that. But I can get even deeper. Over the years, you guys would have heard me criticize us selling your guys. Yeah, Tomori understood at the time, and I still get why he had to go out of all the guys that left. Christensen leaving on a free, and I think to myself, if these guys were still here, is there much difference between what we used to have and our new defense right now? Absolutely not. And that makes you think, if we kept like a handful more of these guys, we'd have a few more 100 million in the bank to invest in key positions. I think we could have signed Osimhen in the summer if we had that type of money to play with. So I don't support selling academy guys for the sake of making sideways moves to the team. Because as I said, if you're signing a Diomande right now, long term that has a benefit. But for this season, what does adding another centre back really do to help us climb the table? It does nothing. I don't think the academy should solely be seen as a selling machine. I'm sorry, like one guy I think we should have kept was Loftus-Cheek. I think he would have really helped us in terms of his seniority within the ranks, obviously his physicality, and he's having a great season at Milan. There was a few players we could have, maybe 1-2 extra, that could have helped us this season, and we could have reinvested the money in key positions in the team, yeah? And listen, most times we're selling off what we're producing to bring in a lot of players that come in needing just as much time. That is the reality of the situation. How many of these signings are coming in straight away and they're hitting the ground running? For the reality in the present of this season, it's about finding that balance. And it's like, listen, you can do your wheelings and dealings in the future, but you can't undermine the present every single time to build towards everything exclusively for the future. And for me, this is how I would feel if by some crazy thing we sold Conor Gallagher. The only way I can see us selling Gallagher is if, and this is for me, yeah, we get bids greater than 50 million. If a club drop 75 million and they've doubled Conor Gallagher's contract and the player himself wants to go, then I can accept it. But outside of that, I can't accept this guy leaving in January whatsoever, yeah? I'm sure Spurs want to test the waters, but again, they must sell players before they can buy, and it seems like they are prioritizing signing a defender more at the moment, so I guess we see what happens. But in my opinion, I don't see the directors doing something that controversial. They're not going to undermine Pochettino immediately straight away, not like in this type of fashion, and I don't think Conor is open to moving yet, so we wait to see what happens. So my friends, that's the Conor Gallagher story out the way. Now for the next story, we discuss Pochettino and our boards, as Poch himself revealed that he held very good conversations with the ownership around having more control over moves in the January window. Now this is a good confirmation to hear, because there was some conflicting reports coming out suggesting that it would be a similar situation as how it was in the summer, where Poch wouldn't have much of a say and the directors would have like full control over who gets brought and who gets bought in the next window. So it's good that Poch, now that he's been there for over 6 months, has a bit more influence. I think at times, listen, managers can't always get what they want, but there has to be a balance where they need certain key players to just help keep the tactical identity of the team going. So be very curious to see what type of players that we turn to in January. Of course, Pochettino was asking for a lot of experience in the summer. Big names like Rice, even bigger names like Lautaro Martinez as well too. Is that the type of player he wants to bring in? I mean, it makes sense, because when I see Nicholas Jackson playing up front for us, with how he is very mobile, how he's comfortable dropping deep, receiving between the lines, etc., etc., that is literally the same role that Martinez is playing again for another season to a very high and world-class level. As Poch said, it is not only about my advice, it is about sharing after 6 months together with the owners and sporting directors, with the context being, you know, areas in the team he feels we could improve upon and those types of matters, right? But to go on, it is a very good communication. We talk every single day. Of course, the decision that we are going to take is because we all agree. If we detect something we need to improve, then we are more than open. We are very analytical and always analyze ourselves to help the club in the best possible way. I think all the story tells me is that probably expects Conor Gallagher to remain in January. I can't see Poch letting this guy leave whatsoever. And I do think that maybe Poch may bring some responsibility in terms of the additions we make, because, you know, he is working with a very young team, with most of these guys being 22, 21, 20 years old. We can't forget that. And they're very supportive of their manager. They feel like he's the type of guy that helps players improve and go to the next level. So I do feel like Pochettino won't undermine that, but he may feel like I need to maybe balance the squad a little bit. And this is where experience could help us in January. So that's a small story out the way. And we end things by discussing the final story involving Victor Osimhen. Now, obviously, yes, I'm coming late with this. Of course, it's old news now. We all saw him liking that Twitter post. Of course, he was getting wishes for his birthday, but also the tweet mentioned, are you going to come and save our football club? So it was very, very cheeky from Osimhen, but he's the type of character I like, where he has fun with the fans. It's nice to see that sometimes. Regardless though, all I know, and I'm sure you guys know the same thing too, is that we are still looking to sign Osimhen. We are still holding constant talks all the time. Now, the big news recently was the fact that Osman has agreed to signing a contract extension at Napoli. Does that ruin his chances of signing for us? Absolutely not. He's only signed a 1-year extension. By doing this in the short term, it means that Osman has now doubled his contract. He'll be earning around 8.7 million a year. And the main benefit is there is now a release clause inserted in this deal. Now, it's believed to be around £112 million, which is a crazy amount of money. But now we know that there is a figure on the table. This is where we can find the best way to structure a deal. We are like, structured transfers FC every transfer window. We've not been phased by splashing the big money where we feel it's needed, and it won't be any different for Osimhen. Obviously, if we can get the parcel agreement from the player, which rumors suggest that we kind of already have, if he comes to the Premier League, he'd like to sign for us. It really comes down to how we structure the deal and how we look to pay for Osimhen. And I do think that we aren't going to be phased by paying him top money wages. Now, realistically, he is signed in the summer window. That's because Napoli don't want to sell him in January. Now, if for some reason we were able to persuade Napoli to let us sign him right now, again, knowing how we do things in windows, you can never fully write anything off for this football club, right? And as I said earlier, I think we only get suggestions of this if someone big like a Conor Gallagher was to leave in the January window. Still though, I'm going to end things by saying this, and I hope I'm not being a killjoy, but I've always said for years in this channel, strikers complement the team you are. And I think one thing we're noticing recently is that Pochettino wants his striker to be more than just someone who plays on the last lines. He wants them to be involved in the play, to bring his teammates into the game. We saw this with Harry Kane being the famous example. His relationships with Ali and Sons out wide. Nicholas Jackson is showing a bit of promise in this area right now, with how he's releasing your Mudriks and your Palmers and Nkunkus. And when I look at Osman tactically, he is more of a on-the-shoulder striker, killer inside the box, but you must give him the service. You must play towards him. He's someone the players would have to pass to. It has to be that type of attention to detail I'm seeing, if we're that confident in spending yet another 100 million on a striker of his dimensions. Because as I'm noticing, there seems to be a reliance on Pochettino wanting a striker to have more involvement in the build-up. So let's see what happens later in the windows, my friends. And on that note, that is the end for today's video. So hit that like button, share your thoughts and opinions. Tomorrow I am going to do a What We Learned video, and I'm going to do a post-match stream. There's no time to do it tonight. So tomorrow, double uploads. Make sure you guys come back. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Cool.